You can pack your things and leave. There's the door. There's the door, bitch!
Hey! What is the tea? The girls are fighting! No! The girls are fighting! Why? Why?
Hello fellow emos and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going over the beef Oli Sykes and Kellin Quinn had on Twitter. But before we jump into that, don't forget to subscribe. I post new videos weekly, and as always, MCR5 2024. It is so real, it is so happening, you just need to sparkle like Bowie in the morning sun. Let's go. Before I can explain the beef that Oli and Kellin had, I first need to explain who they are. This is just going to be a brief explanation because they're some of the most famous musicians in the scene, but also I feel like their history gives a lot of context to the beef and the aftermath. Oli Sykes. Oli Sykes is the lead singer of the British band Bring Me the Horizon. They started off as a deathcore band, which is very different from their sound today. In 2006, they released their debut studio album, Count Your Blessings, which despite being a deathcore album, it hit number 93 on the UK albums chart, which is massive. I remember everyone used to set their MSN song to tell Slater to not wash his D, and it really was that song, you know? I'm not particularly into deathcore, and yet I am a fan of this album, just the attitude on it is just magnetic. However, the band would obviously slowly depart from this sound. Their second album, S-Word Season, was released in 2008 and is more traditional metalcore. I definitely prefer this album, as did critics, and it performed better commercially. It reached number 47 on the UK albums chart, number 2 on the US Heatseekers albums chart, number 28 on the Australian albums chart, and number 27 on the Swedish albums chart. Fun fact, some kids at my school performed No Need for Introductions, I Read About Girls Like You on the back of toilet doors at a talent show, and the faculty lost their minds. In 2010, Bring Me the Horizon released another album called There Is a Hell, Believe Me I've Seen It, There Is a Heaven, Let's Keep It a Secret. They once again changed their sound. It was still metalcore, but it was just less heavy. This genre changed and showed that the album performed very well internationally, and the album charted in America, the UK, Canada, Japan, Germany, and Sweden. And then in 2013, the band released the album Sempiternal. To say this album was a cultural reset would be an understatement. It changed the scene forever. If you haven't listened to this album, then you have to. It is so good. My review of it cannot capture what a masterpiece it is. For this album, the band once again changed their style and became more post-hardcore. This paid off tremendously for them, and commercially the album was such a huge success. It charted in the UK, America, Canada, Japan, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Finland, France, Ireland, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, Scotland, and Switzerland. Absolutely phenomenal album and amazing sales to match. The band was on top of the world when the beef happened, although of course we know that Bring Me went on to continue to only get bigger. Now let's move on to Kellin. Kellin Quinn is the lead singer of the band Sleeping with Sirens. He's probably most well known for his vocal style, which is very high for a male. I really enjoy Sleeping with Sirens, but I do understand why they're such a polarizing band because Kellin's voice, it is unusual, it is. Sleeping with Sirens formed in 2009 in the States, and they released their debut album, With Ears to See and Eyes to Hear, the following year. It was an instant classic and hit number 7 on the US Heatseekers albums chart and number 36 on the US Independent albums chart. Despite it being a commercial success, the reviews were incredibly mixed. Sputnik Music wrote the following about their debut. As of March 23rd, Florida's Sleeping with Sirens debut album has been out. The first time I heard this band, I actually laughed out loud. My friend Josh showed me the title track With Ears to See and Eyes to Hear. There is a distinct part in the song when Kellin sings his lines in rapid fire fashion, and I laughed out loud from the cheesiness. Since then, they had caught my attention, but in a negative fashion. I later checked out their MySpace that same night and gave them another chance, and let's just say, I changed my mind. Alternative Press wrote, "The depressing part about this is that the band members themselves are more than adept. Good players with strong licks and a snare-tight rhythm section, but it's ruined by a glossy sheen that won't come off, even with a scalding shower and a piece of steel wood. Singer Kellin Quinn's incessant whining like Rush Geddy Lee meets Justin Bieber overpowers anything else. This guy either needs to get his balls out of the vice or go ahead and grow an entirely new pair, and the ultra puffy ballad Let Love Bleed Red has to be a joke, right?" The reason I'm highlighting these reviews is because it gives context to the beef. Sleeping with Sirens and mostly Kellin were an easy target within the scene. So many people mocked the band, Kellin, and their fans. In 2011, Sleeping with Sirens released their second album, Let's Cheers to This. It's such a great album and it features the mega hit If You Can't Hang, and the anthem for all of us with daddy issues, A Trophy Father's Trophy Son. Once again, the album performed well on the charts and it hit number 78 on the Billboard 200 chart, number 13 on the US Independent Albums chart, and number 13 on the UK Independent Album Breakers chart. Reviews were generally more positive for this album, but Sleeping with Sirens was still mostly labelled as a band exclusively for teenage girls. However, this didn't slow them down, and the following year they released an EP called If You Were a Movie, This Would Be Your Soundtrack. The EP most notably contains acoustic covers of their previously released songs, If I'm James Dean, You're Audrey Hepburn, and With Ears to See and Eyes to Hear. It also contains their hugely popular cover of Iris. It is therefore not surprising that this EP once again was another commercial success. It hit number 11 on the Australian Heatseekers albums chart, number 17 on the US Billboard 200 chart, and number 42 on the Canadian Alternative Albums chart. Consistent as ever, Sleeping with Sirens dropped another album the following year called Feel. Can we just talk about the fact that they were dropping a release a year? That is insane, and their label really had them working overtime. However, if I'm honest, I don't really like this album. I just found the lyrics underwhelming, the music too polished, and it just lacked the sparkle that their previous music had. Having said that though, the album once again performed well commercially. It hit number 3 on the US Billboard 200 chart, number 36 on the UK Albums chart, and number 13 on the Australian Albums chart. Sleeping with Sirens really cemented themselves as one of the most popular bands in the scene with this album. This is in spite of the fact that they never could shake the criticisms about Kellin's voice and how they only appealed to teenage girls. It is important to note that Bring Me the Horizon were far more successful internationally than Sleeping with Sirens were. Bring Me were also seen as less feminine, and of course, unfortunately, the world sees femininity as a bad thing. Okay, so we know who Oli and Kellin are, but why did they have beef? It all started in August 2013 when Kellin announced that he was selling an $80 Polaroid package. The package included an autographed Polaroid picture with Kellin, a group Q&A session with Kellin, a singing session with Sleeping with Sirens, a large autographed double-sided poster, a ticket to the field tour, as well as early entry to the show. Oli thought this was obscene and called it out on Twitter by writing, "Next USA tour, Oli Sykes special Polaroid package, take a photo with me, special price, absolutely no charge at all, fucking cock stars." Kellin responded to Oli by writing, "I feel like this is an amazing deal for $80. If you disagree, then don't buy it. No one's forcing you, K." He then listed what was in the package and added, "Keep in mind, Polaroid film is super expensive. You're getting the ticket to the show, you get front row over everyone else. If you only want to pay general admission, then just do that. However, if you do like the idea of doing all these things including, it's only $80. I would never charge someone money just for a picture with me. I try and do anything and everything for my fans. I do in fact have a family. That family needs to be fed. So thanks for supporting us and helping me continue to tour. Without you, there is no us. Love you, Kellin." The beef didn't stop there though, because Oli got a face tattoo of a feather and Kellin tweeted the tattoo and said, "Dude, so stoked. My best bud Oli loved our album so much he got the artwork tattooed on his face." Oli, quick-witted as ever, fired back with a, "It's just such a good album. You must have been so stoked when Jesse wrote it all." Kellin, wanting to get the last word in, responded with, "Maybe he can sign his name next to your feather. You have his number, right? I'm sure he'd be stoked to do it." Kellin later followed up with the following: "Listen to what you want to listen to. Fans are allowed to talk shit to each other just as much as you're allowed to talk shit to us. I respect Bring Me. They make good music. I'm allowed to talk some shit if I want. So Oli, no need to make war between bands. I'm sick of this shit. I'm so thankful to anyone that shows up to shows and supports us. I go out of my way to do so much for my fans," which was followed by, "If you feel differently, then there's the door. I'm done justifying myself. Thanks to the true Sleeping with Sirens fans. Fuck the rest." And that was it. As someone who was in the scene when this all went down, I do have to say that calling it a Polaroid package was unwise. I, like many other people, thought you were paying $80 simply for a Polaroid with Kellin, which of course would be ridiculous. However, I think the whole package was fairly priced, and they probably should have labelled it as being like a VIP package or something like that. I found it so funny that Kellin really focused on Polaroid film is so expensive. Which is true, right, but I think you should focus more on how the package includes so much else. I've always assumed that Oli's response was due to the fact that, like the rest of us, he thought it was just $80 for one Polaroid, which, if it was true, that would make his tweets reasonable in my opinion. However, having said that, Oli was just more quick-witted, and so for that reason he is the winner of this beef in my mind. But only because Kellin decided to start round 2 for some god unknown reason. Had it stayed on just round 1, then Kellin would have been the victor in my mind. Not that any of this particularly matters, but you know, as always, I just love throwing in my 2 cents. And if you're sat there thinking, wow, it's so noble of Oli to be against paid meet and greets, then you need to cut that thought short. Oli is on Cameo. Cameo is a website where you can access thousands of celebrities and request personalized video messages for any occasion. He's currently charging £280 per video. That's about 350 USD. The minimum wage in the UK is currently $11.44, and that's only if you're a certain age. If his younger fans are wanting this, then they're gonna earn even less probably. And that means a minimum wage worker would have to work over 24 hours to afford a video from Oli. That is obscene, in my opinion, and I'm not necessarily against paid meet and greets either, it depends on the price. And I am saying that as a Bring Me the Horizon fan. I'm literally wearing their merch right now. Oli really tore Kellin a new one, only to turn around and do the same thing, essentially, if not worse, because $350 for one video versus $80 for a whole VIP package. Yeah, but that's it. That is where we're going to leave today's video. What do you think of this beef? Whose side were you on? And what do you think of Oli being on Cameo after he said all of that?